Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Cycle 5858. I am Amish Cycle. Following news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please, let's go to the headlines.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for streaming with us. I'm Rita Roy, and welcome to ABC News Live Weekend. Let's take a look at your top headlines. No real ID, it could cost you next time you go to the airport. The TSA is considering a rule that would charge travelers $18 if they try to pass through an airport security checkpoint without the new ID or a passport. Under the rule, passengers could still board their flights, but would have to verify their identity on new biometric kiosks, with that fee helping to pay for the new tech. But it's not clear when the new system would roll out. You could soon be getting a payment from Amazon. That's because the giant has started issuing refunds related to its settlement with the FTC. The agency alleged the company enrolled millions into Amazon Prime memberships and then purposely made it difficult for them to cancel. Eligible customers will receive payments up to $51 until December 24th. Anyone who doesn't receive a payment before then will get the chance to file a claim at a later date. Mr. Reggiano, are you ready for your close-up? The Parmesan Reggiano Consortium announced it has signed with a major Hollywood agency to get its Italian cheese onto more television and movie screens. Importers say the move will help raise awareness for the brand, even if it risks making that next action movie a little cheesier. Turning now to our top story, the growing scam involving Bitcoin ATMs. They're popular at gas stations, supermarkets, and liquor stores, and have become a favorite tool of scammers. ABC's Jay O'Brien has more.
How much money did you put in here? This is the moment police in Florida found an 80-year-old man depositing tens of thousands of his life savings into what's called a Bitcoin ATM machine. Do you have any idea how much money you have? Today, 40,000. Why? Pulling on a loan with his bank and was told to protect his money by putting it into
the U.S. is reportedly ramping up the pressure on Venezuela as it looks towards a post-Maduro future, with a new phase of the operations eyeing options to overthrow him. The Trump administration reportedly considering dropping leaflets to pressure the dictator on his birthday, which is today, and to get him to flee the country on his own. Alex Gray served as chief of staff to the National Security Council during President Trump's first term, and he joins us now. Alex, welcome. So we know there's a new phase. We also heard yesterday they said everything is on the table, or no options are off the table. So what do you think is going to happen next? How will this unfold?
Well, thanks for having me, Rachel. I think the president is doing everything he can through his mantra of peace through strength to use American military power and covert means to compel Maduro to make the right choice, which is to leave Venezuela, to give the Venezuelan people an opportunity to have a new future. Remember, 25 years, the Chavez-Maduro dictatorship, and the Venezuelan people have gone from being the wealthiest in the hemisphere to the poorest because of the Marxist-Leninist ideology of that regime. And also, Rachel, this is incredibly important, they are directly killing Americans every single day because the Venezuelan regime and the narco-traffickers are essentially one and the same. And unlike the presidents of both parties since the end of the Cold War, President Trump is actually focused on what's happening in our hemisphere that's affecting our homeland. Instead of pushing these democracy promotion wars in the Middle East, he is focused on our hemisphere, which is so long overdue.
You know, that's a very interesting point. I think historically speaking, we've never seen anything like this, I think. And I think since the end of the Cold War, nobody is focused on Latin America. It's been under a lot of neglect, and yet, as you say, it affects us deeply. The president talks a lot about the drugs coming in. I think he's right. The cartels, which, as you know, are definitely a menace, not just in the hemisphere. They end up affecting America as well. But how much of this also has to do, honestly speaking, with China?
Rachel, I think you cannot understate how significant this is in terms of our larger competition with China. In the absence of America, again, as presidents of both parties were focused on these endless wars overseas, China and Russia were expanding their foothold in our hemisphere. And Venezuela was a major point for Russian and Chinese infiltration of the hemisphere. And President Trump, I think, is looking at this and saying, we cannot allow our greatest geopolitical rival in Beijing to have a presence in our neighborhood the way China has for the last 20 years. This is a major effort. And while we've allowed the Venezuelan regime to contribute throwing tons of drugs into the United States, we've also allowed China to gain a foothold in the energy reserves in Venezuela, which is obviously totally against our interests. So the president is taking, I think, a really strategic focus here.
Yeah, we've been on the couch talking about how does he exit? You know, what does that look like? I'm also looking at what's happening between Ukraine and Russia. Russia also an ally of Maduro and his dictatorship. Wondering, in my mind, how much of that negotiation will secretly involve helping to find a place for Maduro to go to. Would you tell us what you think that looks like? Where does he go? I know he must be worried about the cartels killing him. Absolutely, he's the head of this operation. So what does it look like for him? How does he leave without getting killed by the cartels? And who would take him?
Well, something tells me he's probably going to end up in Havana with his benefactors in the Cuban regime. And he also
this Saturday night, hunting for grizzly bears. Residents in a BC community are warned to stay indoors after a school field trip was attacked. An update on the search and the victims. A bad deal.
It would be the end of Ukraine as we know it.
World leaders scramble to save Ukraine from the U.S. president's peace plan. Fossil fuel fight. The Global Climate Change Summit wraps up in Brazil. What's missing from the final agreement? Plus, gambling and advertising.
I don't think it should be advertised.
The battle to ban sports betting ads in Canada.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The hunt is on in northern BC for a bear that attacked a group of school children and teachers on Thursday during a field trip in the remote community of Bella Coola. A teacher and 3 students were sent to hospital. At least 2 of those victims remain in critical condition. We're learning new details tonight about the teachers' courageous efforts to fight off the bear. Paul Johnson is in Bella Coola with the very latest on the search. Paul.
Jeff, we're nearing the end of the second full day of searching for that bear, and so far from what we can understand, that bear is still on the loose. The search is being led by the BC.
Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Meredith Sheehan. Residents across the top end are assessing the damage from Cyclone Fina. The storm passed just to the north of Darwin as a Category 3 system last night. Fina is the strongest cyclone to track in the vicinity of Darwin since Tracy more than 50 years ago. Winds near the centre of the system reached speeds of 140 kilometres an hour, and 19,000 homes have lost power over the past 24 hours. The Bureau of Meteorology has downgraded the threat to Darwin and parts of the Tiwi Islands.
We're likely to see the motion of Tropical Cyclone Vina continue towards the west-southwest, approaching the Kimberley coast tomorrow and Tuesday. But at this stage, we're expecting to remain offshore, but the southern edge of the cyclone could impact our residents and communities in the northern Kimberley area, so that's why they're under a cyclone watch, and they could see rains and winds increase there from tomorrow.
Authorities say Rirumajunga in the southern part of the Tiwi Islands was the closest to the eye of the cyclone, and people there should expect extended power outages. The SES is working to clear debris and free up roads covered in fallen trees. Crews are responding to more than 500 requests for help. Services are starting to resume. Darwin Airport has reopened. Reporter Olivana Lathoris joins me now from Darwin. Ollie, what has the damage been like across Darwin?
they begin to go back to their daily lives as the system tracks west. Authorities are investigating the cause of a house fire that's killed one person north of Brisbane. Emergency services were called to a home in Thornton just after 5:30 this morning, treating 4 people for serious burns. The 2 adults and 2 teenagers were rushed to hospital in a potentially life-threatening condition. Western leaders meeting on the sidelines of the G20 summit in South Africa have criticised the peace plan to stop the war in Ukraine. The UK and other Ukraine allies have voiced concerns over the 28-point proposal drafted by the US and favouring Russia's demands. And a compromised climate deal has been reached at the COP30 summit in Brazil. The deal will see a boost to funding for poorer nations that are most being affected by global warming, but the deal crucially omitted any mention of fossil fuels. And those are the latest stories on ABC News.
Good afternoon, this is Sky News Today with me, Matt Darvett. It is 3 o'clock. Our top stories as Ukraine's allies put Donald Trump's peace plan under the lens. The US president hits out at Ukraine's leadership, saying they've expressed zero gratitude for his efforts. The talks, though, are continuing in Geneva this afternoon, with Ukrainian officials hailing a constructive mood with talks between US, British and European delegates. Also ahead, a government minister refuses to say if the Chancellor will scrap the 2-child benefit cap ahead of Wednesday's budget. Israel's military says it has struck Hezbollah militants in Lebanon in its first attack on Beirut in months. Sky News investigates the anti-woke Westerners who are relocating to ultra-conservative Russia so they feel safer than ever.
This is a complete demonic attack against the conservative Christian families, and we will not stand for this.
And this gold pocket watch recovered from the Titanic sells for a record price. We'll tell you all about the love story behind it. Good afternoon. President Trump has hit out at the Ukrainian leadership.
Hello there, here are the headlines. Some President Cyril Ramaphosa says the G20 leaders' declaration marks a renewed commitment to unite an increasingly fragmented world. The leaders passed an agreement focusing on taking stronger steps together against climate change, despite objections from the US, which boycotted the event. The statement also urged global action on helping poorer nations manage their debt. Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong met with several European leaders on the sidelines of the gathering, reaffirming ties and exploring further collaboration. Mr. Wong met his Dutch counterpart Dick Schoof and said the two countries are strengthening the partnership to navigate the uncertain world together. The Singapore leader also held talks with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to discuss building on their strategic ties in areas such as the economy, defense, cyber and digital fronts. Talks between Ukraine and its European allies have begun in Geneva to discuss a US peace plan to end Russia's invasion. They'll be meeting US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Earlier, the European allies held talks without the US to come up with counter-proposals to shore up a plan widely seen as favoring Moscow. And that is the latest from the CNN newsroom.
Africa News. The news.
More destruction in Gaza in this latest challenge to the ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas. They are blaming each other for the violation. Gazan authorities say Israeli airstrikes on multiple locations on Saturday killed at least 20 people, while Israel says it attacked what it called an armed terrorist who fired its soldiers in an Israeli-held area. Since the ceasefire, Hamas has not stopped violating it, and we are acting accordingly. There have been several attempts by it to penetrate our territory beyond the yellow line and to try to harm our soldiers.
Well, thank you very much. We've just had a great meeting, a really good, very productive.
Africa News.
school children and 12 teachers were abducted by gunmen during Friday's attack on a Catholic school in Nigeria's Niger state. The Christian Association of Nigeria on Saturday updated an earlier tally of 215 children after a verification exercise and a final census were carried out. The spokesperson of the association's Niger state chapter said 88 other students were captured after they tried to escape during the attack. This school kidnapping happened just 4 days after armed men seized 25 school children in similar circumstances in neighboring Kebbi state. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the abductions. Authorities said tactical squads have been deployed alongside local hunters to rescue the children. General Abdurrahman Chani arrived in Niamey on Thursday night, marking the end of a weeks-long trip throughout Niger. In Niamey, thousands of people turned out to welcome him along the route from the airport to the presidential palace. For Zachary Bizo, seeing the Nigerian president return from his tour is a source of immense pleasure.
C'est un choix immense, un plaisir. Le fait d'accueillir notre chef de l'État.
It's a great joy and pleasure to welcome our head of state. Not only is he a sincere patriot, he is also honest with his people. The message we were waiting for was to stand united and build the country together because the essential work has already been done. I think that building this country is what interests us all.
Je pense maintenant c'est la construction de ce pays qui nous intéresse tous.
For more than 10 years, Niger has been facing terrorism in virtually every region of the country. During his tour, Chani called on the population to be more resilient and on the military to be more vigilant against the fighters of armed terrorist groups. Activist Ira Tanimun came all the way to resistance where he believes that by going out to meet the people, the military leader has shown his willingness to make sacrifices.
Avec cette sortie du président qui a fait environ 2500 à 3000 km.
With the president's trip covering between 2,500 and 3,000 kilometers, we feel that things are really taking off again. We feel that we are on the right track because President Chani has made a tremendous sacrifice. He has traveled to every corner of this country, from the most remote areas of Terra to Asamaka, from Gaya to Difa. That is something to be proud of. The economy, health, security and agriculture.
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.